What is up, Maryland basketball fans? Welcome to another Fear the Podcast. I'm Matt Moderno, being joined here today by Derek Johnson of Locked on Jayhawks. Obviously, a big announcement here today for the Maryland fan base. We were pretty down for a few minutes. We lost out on a four-star recruit in Sebastian Wilkins, lost to old arch rival Duke, and then immediately they announced that Rakease Passmore is transferring in from Kansas. This is a guy I know almost nothing about, but on paper, at least, he's a 6'5" guard, 185 pounds from Florida. Played in 23 games, averaged zero point 0.7 points and zero point 0.6 rebounds in just about 5 minutes per game. Again, Derek joining from Locked on Jayhawks here. You got to see at least a little bit of the minutes he played this year. What can you tell us about Rakease Passmore?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. First of all, KU just lost a battle to Duke as well, so we're in the same boat there. A little handshake meme on that one. But
I was hoping that you losing Dame Sarr to them would mean that we would keep Sebastian Wilkins. Right. So I thought we could benefit from your pain there. No offense, but it didn't work out for either of us.
Yeah, no, unfortunately it did not. So, Rakease Passmore is somebody that, people were very excited when he first came to KU, and he was one of the guys who coming into this offseason, really the talk was, is there anything you can do to keep him around? Because a guy who's kind of a quasi top 50 recruit coming in, and you've seen so many of those guys, whether they've been, close to top 50-ish, top 100-ish, that Bill Self has developed over his time at Kansas. And those have been the guys. It hasn't as much been the, five-star McDonald's Americans. Those guys, a lot of times end up being one and dones. It's those guys who are, top 40, top 50, top 100 recruits that they've been able to develop and have their best season. You go back to the title team in 2022, Ochai Agbaji is kind of a fringe top 100 recruit. By the time he's a senior, he's an All-American. And so Passmore kind of felt like one of those guys where it was like, can he be on that sort of path of development? Now, it just wasn't quite there in year one. There were times he looked hesitant when he was on the floor. There were times where he just looked like a freshman out there. But from an athletic standpoint, from a scoring potential standpoint, he's definitely somebody that I had high hopes for. I don't know how much of it would have been this year. I think the hope was that last year he was going to crack the rotation. This year you could have talked about him. Could he be a starter? And then maybe by the time he's a junior, he'd be a stud and then it would go off to the NBA. Maybe you push that back a year. Maybe you say, okay, this year on Maryland, like he could be a rotation guy. Maybe by a junior, he's starting. Maybe by the time he's a senior, he could be an all-conference type of player.
You mentioned a top 50-ish guy. I was the number 13 small forward in 24/7's composite rankings for the class of 2024. I was a 7th ranked player available in the transfer portal. So it seems like the folks, here in the mothership at 247 think that, you're right there. This is a guy that could make a jump this year. He said himself that he is late to the game of basketball. This is only like his 6th or 7th year. Playing the sport, was mainly a football guy. You can kind of see it in his build. He's got the football player build a little bit here, but freak athlete. Is it the rawness of not being like, super, battle tested at a high level of basketball? Like he was a pretty productive high school player, actually shot the ball pretty well, which I was kind of surprised to see just from not knowing much about him. 50%-ish from the field, 35% from behind the arc in high school. So I don't know, I guess, what about him was so raw, and do you see him being able to take a jump in a particular area this year?
Yeah, I think it was just little things, mental mistakes that you'd see over the course of the game. So a lot of times, and especially with Bill Self, it can be a short leash if you're not in that circle of trust, so to speak, to where, maybe he gets lost off ball, right? Maybe it's a small defensive mistake. Maybe it's not knowing where to be on the offensive end. I do think there was a little bit of an unfair short leash at times for Rakease Passmore. There was like a press conference earlier in the week before one game where Bill Self was talking about, wanting his guys to kind of like be ready to shoot and be ready to, and Rakease Passmore comes into the game and has a pretty good look at a three. It is a little bit earlier on in the shot clock, but it was a pretty good look. He launches it up and immediately Bill Self gives him the hook. And from there, it kind of was like, okay, I don't know, is this kid going to come back? Is he not? You never really know in today's age with the portal. But at that point, it was like, okay, this probably ain't working. And he wasn't really fond for the rotation at that point in time. So I do think that, there were some mistakes here or there. I also think there were several games that he came into where there just wasn't really any production. There might be games where he comes in for, 7 minutes for the game, and it's like, okay, you ended up with one foul and one rebound, and that's it, right? So there wasn't a ton there. And whether it was a mental mistake here or just moments where you could just tell he was a freshman, right? There were other moments, though, where you could see the athleticism on display. There were other moments where you could see him defending as hard as he possibly could, and he was making hustle plays, and he was doing everything in his power to try to stay on the court, but it just didn't come together for whatever reason. But you're right. I mean, you're talking about a guy who does have potential to be a super athletic wing, who can defend really well and shoot the three ball well. And again, how much of that is going to come together this year? Could it take another year of development? It might. But when it does come together for Rakease Passmore, I think the dude's going to be a stud.
I saw somebody on our message board ask if this is a candidate to be a redshirt this year, given how unproductive he was last year, because Buzz Williams likes to redshirt people, but there's no world in which a guy transfers away from Kansas where he didn't play because he wants more playing time and then is willing to accept a red shirt. I guess the question will be, what is the expectation, for him for minutes in this kind of setting? But I think Buzz Williams likes to play a lot of guys and platoon them. And, sometimes guys like this start, and some of the more experienced guys will even come off the bench sometimes. So I do think there's a, pathway for him to at least get minutes right off the bat and prove if, he's ready to go or made some strides in the right direction here. I guess if he was going to be able to contribute in year one, do you think it's more as like a defender, a transition finisher, slasher type, or is this a spot up catch and shoot guy? Like, what do you think the role will be for him in a situation like this?
I think 3-and-D wing. You see 6'5" as a guard, and that can kind of go multiple ways. Are you a 2 guard or are you a 3? I view him more as a 3, a college 3. So I think a 3-and-D wing where he's hustling, he's athletic, he's playing strong defense for Buzz Williams. Maybe he's crashing the offensive glass. That's been a thing with Buzz, obviously, when he was at Texas A&M. And spacing the floors, hitting spot up threes on the offensive end. I think that's something he can do. So, I absolutely think he can be a rotation player right away in year one. And honestly, if you told me he had a good enough offseason that he was a starter, it wouldn't shock me, just because that's how highly I think of what he could potentially be down the road. But yeah, to your idea on, redshirting, I don't think that would happen. I think that's a big reason why he left Kansas, is that, maybe at Kansas he was going to have to fight. Are you going to be, Bill Self likes to play 7 guys in rotation. Maybe he was kind of on the fringe of, is he going to be the 8th man? Is he going to be the 9th man? Is he going to maybe work his way into the 7th man? So I think that was part of him leaving, that I don't think it's as much about, money necessarily or develop. I think he wants to play, he wants a playing time role position right away. So could that be a 6th man? Could that be a 7th man, 8th man? Could that be a 5th starter? I don't know. But yeah, I think 3-and-D is kind of what you're looking at.
There are certain guys where they just need a year to watch the game and let it slow down for them and things like that. But someone like this that is newer to the game, I think he's only going to get better by playing too. So I think this would be a good investment from Buzz Williams, that, maybe he isn't the most productive guy for you this year, but if you can find a way to get him minutes, like you said, by next year or the year after, potentially that could really pay off for you. All right. Anything else that's worth knowing about Rakease Passmore? I did hear there was some anecdotal stuff about maybe some injuries or some health stuff along the way. Anything you can shed light on there throughout the course of the year that maybe held him up?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there was anything too major in terms of that, but to your idea on, it's almost like letting him play through things, right? Because it was tough with this team this past year for Kansas and Bill Self. And again, in general, Bill Self is pretty demanding, and you have to be kind of in his circle of trust. And that was really put to the limit this year with the transfers they brought in, because especially on the wing where Rakease Passmore is playing for this Kansas team, where it's like you have AJ Storr and Ryland Griffin, and you paid big money for those guys. So it's almost like, okay, they're going to be ahead of the pecking order of Rakease Passmore, which means that for Rakease, it's not just that some guys, maybe you can be out there and it's a 3-strike approach where it's like, okay, you made 3 mistakes and then we're going to pull you out. With Rakease, because his role was kind of so limited, it was almost like you make 1 mistake and you're gone.
That's so tough.
And yeah, it is so tough. And it's not just tough because, okay, you make 1 mistake and that limits your minutes, but what does that do to you mentally?
No confidence at that point.
Exactly. So I think being in a situation where, to me, I don't know, I've always got this feel from Buzz Williams, I could be off with this, but that he really does care more about, are you just playing hard? If you're playing hard, you're playing defense, you're rebounding, you're going to stay out there, right? And so I think that'll be a good thing for Rakease Passmore, that like you can play through a little bit more mistakes. And so I could see him even by, maybe we're not even talking a full year here. If he's being let on to play through some mistakes through, the first couple months of the season, like it would not shock me if all of a sudden you're in the middle of I don't know, February or something, and you're like, wow, look at these last 8 games that Rakease Passmore has played in conference play, and like he's starting to take off at this point in time. I think that's kind of the biggest thing you're looking for, and if you provide that opportunity, I think he could really reward you with kind of the output that you're going to see.
I love that. This conversation has already made me feel really good about things because 1, I think we really needed a 3. 2, we definitely need some perimeter shooting. So if he's just like a competent 3-point shooter, on some wide open looks, we'll absolutely take that at this point. Another guy coming in from Kansas, which is kind of interesting. Buzz Williams brings a couple guys from Texas A&M with him. Also brings 2 guards, that played together at Washington State in Isaiah Watts and Miles Rice. And now we've got 2 Kansas players coming in together here. So I don't know, something about the package deals is appealing to them.
Makes it easy to pick roommates, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's some familiarity there on this year, this ever-changing portal landscape. Having at least a few guys that know each other is not the worst thing in the world here, I guess. But bringing in a senior guard in David Coit, I think they list him at 5'11", maybe a little shorter than that. I haven't seen him in person unless he's grown in the last couple of years. But when I saw him, he was in prep school. It was the 3rd guard in the rotation at that time on a pretty good prep school team. But then went to JUCO, led the country in scoring there at a certain point. And then by his 2nd year at Northern Illinois, he averaged 21 points per game, 3 rebounds, 3.5 assists, a steal, and about 2.5 turnovers. Was over to Kansas last year. Not quite as productive, starts 3 of 34 games, averages 5 points, 1.5 rebounds, 1.3 assists, a half a steal, a half a turnover. Did shoot about 39% from 3, though, which is encouraging, again, for us, for a team that needs shooting. But I know was this David Coit not being able to rise to the level of competition? Was this a weird fit? Was this a block by minutes? A little bit of the above? I guess walk me through a little bit of the David Coit at Kansas experience this year.
Yeah, so going back to the Bill Self rotation stuff, he loves to have somebody who's like like on the fringe of that rotation who can come in and shoot threes. And if they're on that night, they'll play. Like if you go back and you watch the Houston game, the one that was in Houston at the end of the season, he's playing like 30 minutes because he's making shots, he's making threes. Then you go to some games where maybe he starts 0 for 2, maybe he starts 0 for 3, and it's like he's in single digit minutes. So that's kind of part of it with Bill Self, where if you're at that point, that's the case. He had a very interesting season because he started off in like exhibition play in the beginning of the year, just making everything. Yeah. And then they started playing some of the better competition and he couldn't buy a single 3. And it was like, okay, what's going on here? But there were kind of ebbs and flows throughout the season. He's listed at 5'11", might be closer to like 5'8", 5'9". Yeah. But it's interesting. He can get hot in a hurry and he can shoot threes off movement. He can shoot them off the dribble. He can shoot them from super deep on. He's a fun player to watch and he works really hard. Like all the stories and the reports and accounts that you would hear about him is that he's always in the gym, that he was being a good veteran leader and somebody who I think is a good player to add to your locker room, just in terms of maturity and providing some of the things to do, but also, that he can get hot in a moment's notice. Now it is going to be more inconsistent, right? It's not something where he's somebody who's like every game you can count on him hitting 2 or 3 threes. There might be some games where he hits 5. There might be some where he hits, he goes 0 for 5, right? But he's lightning in a bottle, so to speak, a little bit. And I think I really like the fit. If again, like I don't know if Buzz Williams plans on doing the same things at Maryland that he did at Texas A&M, because it feels like that stuff was different from some of his previous stops. But like when you look at what they were doing at Texas A&M this past year and really the past couple of years, it was basically just like a bunch of guys are going to crash the glass and be athletes and play defense. And then they're going to have like 1 or 2 guards who are going to be almost like shot chuckers. They're just going to like launch up a bunch of threes. Like Wade Taylor might get hot this game. Zurich Phelps might get hot this game, or like they might miss some shots, or like whatever, but we're going to clean up the offense glass. I think he kind of fits perfectly into that. He's somebody who can get hot in a moment's notice. And if he's having an off game, maybe the thought is, okay, we're just going to be such a good offensive rebounding team to kind of make up for it.
Yeah, those are both basically post-entry passes if you miss them, right? Like,
Yeah.
so it's a win-win there. Like I mentioned, I got to see him in prep school. He played for a really good friend of mine, and when I asked him about David Coit, one of the questions I had was just about him as a defender because he is a little undersized. How's he going to hold up in the Big Ten as well? And he said, "Look, I wouldn't worry about him on that end because exactly what you just talked about. Like he's going to compete at the very least, and if someone gives effort and is surrounded by other really good team defenders, I'm not so worried about somebody exploiting the size there a ton. Like obviously, some matchups will be a little tougher than other there, but I guess how did you view him on the defensive end this season?"
Very good at pressuring the ball.
Mhm.
There were times that Kansas would have him pressure as soon as whoever he was guarding got the ball inbounded to him.
Mhm.
And I think that's just from he has very good quickness, so it was very
Sure.
good at pressuring the ball.
Okay.
I think you saw sometimes where maybe the size, other teams tried to take advantage of that. I don't know that I would call him like a neutral defender, probably be below average defender because again, the
Okay.
ball pressuring is good. I think the on ball defense, if you have a quick guard, can be pretty good. There are
Mhm.
times he gets lost off the ball. And then the size thing, like it does matter a little bit there.
Sure.
So you look back at like some of the I don't know, the on-off ratings on the defensive end of the court, whether you're going back to his time before Kansas, or you're going back to this past year at Kansas. And a lot of times it ends up being more of a negative for him on that end of the floor. But you're right. He does compete on that
Mhm.
end of the floor. So, like, it is going to raise your floor
Sure.
of what you're going to be. Like, you're not going to be the worst defender in the world if you're at least trying.
Yep.
So, there are some limitations for him on the defensive end. But again, if Buzz Williams is surrounding it with the infrastructure, then that's certainly going to help him there. And I think you look more to the strengths of him shooting the threes and say, okay, there are certain deficiencies on the defensive end with him, but it's not impossible to overcome.
I'm always curious about what kind of guy we're getting and how we should feel about them based on how the outgoing fan base, feels about them. Would this been a guy that you would have been happy to have back if he had wanted to stay?
Yes, Kansas fans wanted him back. Honestly, like there was a moment in, I don't even remember. It might have been February, it might have been early March, something like that, where it was right around, maybe it was January. Diego Pavia, the quarterback at Vanderbilt, who opened up all this stuff with the JUCO
Mm-hmm.
ruling that's allowing for the extra year for Diggy
Mm-hmm.
Coit, right? And when that stuff happened, they were asking Diggy, okay, now you have an extra year of college. Like, is this something that you would be interested in and coming back to Kansas? And he was very receptive to it. And he actually was like, yeah, I'd love to be back for another year at Kansas. They talked to Bill Self about it, and he kind of mentioned the same thing. Like, we'd love to have Diggy Coit back.
That's good sound.
Everything from a public perspective was the expectation was that he was going to be back
Yeah.
this next season for Kansas. And Kansas fans were pumped about it because they were like, listen, this guy's perfect for, kind of this bench guard that we can bring in, kind of your sixth man or whatever. And he's a veteran. Again, he's liked in the locker room and he can get hot in a moment's notice. And if it's not his game, then cool, we'll play him 8 minutes and it'll be somebody else's opportunity. But something changed there once the offseason hit, whether it was him wanting a bigger role, whether it was him wanting more NIL money, one of those two, or maybe both of those changed. And then at that point, Kansas was like, listen, we like you for what role you're in or
Yeah.
what NIL money you're in. But if you're wanting more of one of those two things, like we just can't really make that work. So I think Kansas fans wanted him back. But if one of those two or both of those are the case, it makes sense why he would go somewhere else.
So to summarize for anyone tuning in at the end of this, we've got a 3-and-D wing that's athletic with some upside and potential to grow into, and a microwave bench scorer that'll at least get up in you defensively. I think that's 2 for 2 if we're talking about overall solid pickups here from the Maryland fan base. So I guess if you were us, you would feel pretty good about these additions. Was what I'm taking from this, Derek.
Yeah, I mean, if I were in Bill Self's shoes right now, and Rakease Passmore and Diggy Coit were like, "Hey, I actually want to come back to Kansas for another year," I'd be like, "Cool, let's do it. Let's roll with another year." And by the way, I don't know if I've said this over the course of the podcast, but David Coit does go by the nickname Diggy.
Diggy,
So,
yeah.
yeah, a lot of times people just call him Diggy Coit. So there's a little fun fact for you.
Love that. All right, I got one more question I got to ask you. We can keep it super quick though, but local player here for us in Hunter Dickinson. His final two was Maryland and Kansas. Ultimately chooses Kansas. I'm just curious from your guys' perspective, how was the Hunter Dickinson experience received? Like, our Michigan fans seemed like kind of glad for it to be over. I guess how are you guys feeling about the end of that era?
Yeah, so it was a very polarizing era for 2 years because every game you're talking about just like box score hero, right? I mean, he's
Mhm.
putting up 20 and 10 or 25 and 15, and like there were games where he did carry Kansas
Yeah.
to a win. There were also moments though where you felt like you just felt like the I don't know the spirit, the effort wasn't fully there, like not really
Mhm.
chasing long rebounds, and there were certain defensive deficiencies. I do think Hunter was actually a good, like one-on-one defender, a good post-up defender, just because he's giant, so like
Sure.
that's gonna help. But if you were a team who was good at ball screens or spacing the floor, there were some issues there. I also do think Kansas didn't do Hunter any favors by the way they built the roster
No
around him.
spacing and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, there just wasn't the spacing. Like that was the thing with both KJ Adams and Hunter Dickinson. I think individually, either player
Mhm.
could have worked or did work. I
Sure.
mean, Hunter Dickinson went to an Elite Eight with Michigan. KJ Adams was on a number 1 seed as a center when he was the guy kind of playing there. But together, it just didn't really work.
Mhm.
So it's one of those weird things where you have this kind of combo of like, you feel bad that maybe they could have done things a little bit differently. But also, I think just in general, this goes beyond Hunter. I think Kansas fans are ready to turn the page from where
Yeah.
these last 2 years have been, where the core of the roster has been, and just kind of move forward. And I think Kansas fans are. They're, right now, there's certainly a little bit of a bumming out because of missing out on Darian Williams and Dame Sarr and stuff. But I think once we get to the start of the season and really before they've had some whiffs in the portal so far this offseason, there certainly has been this excitement about what you're getting with Darren Peterson and going to have kind of a different look at center with Floyd Badunga.
I don't know, a ton of people know this. Some of my good friends do. I am like a closet Kansas fan in the background because Kirk Heinrich was like my favorite player back in the day. So I still root for you guys to do well inside. So I'm excited for the Darren Peterson era to begin. If it is only a year, that's still great to get that in. So I wish you guys well. Derek, thank you so much for doing this. I already mentioned Locked on Jayhawks here, but please tell people where they can come find you and the great work you do.
Yeah, Locked on Jayhawks. That's the big one. And then at D Johnson Radio, if you just want to give me a follow on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it.
Awesome. I really appreciate the time here, man. Thank you. Good luck this season, and maybe we'll see you at one of these postseason events or something like that this year.
Absolutely. Hey, maybe we get a bowl game. Both teams getting back into,
I like
into the
that.
swing of things, and that'd be a fun one. How about that?
I would take it. I hope to see you there then.
There we go.
All right, everybody know the drill. If you're watching this on YouTube, please click that little like button right below here for us. Rate, review, subscribe, all that great stuff. And remember, you're the podcast.